Hello Millwall fans, Paul Eiffel here. It's time for Chat with Chaps.
Hello, Millwall fans, and welcome back to another episode of Chat with Chaps. Feels like a very un-Millwall-like day. We've signed the player and we've been linked with another one. It's all going off. And to talk to us a little bit about our progression over the season, what we need in this January transfer window, is two fellas that I can't wait to get stuck into. I'll start by introducing a regular panelist on the show. The one and only ladies' man, Mr. Ben Green. I'm going to have to go with this, mate, because Disco said it. How you doing, mate?
I know, this is picking up. Listen, I don't mind it to all of the female Millwall fans that are out there. So, yeah.
All four of them.
Yeah, not many. But, yeah, doing well, mate. I'm looking forward to this one. Seems like a long time ago we did our previous show with Dave. So, yeah, looking forward to it, mate.
Nice one. And, of course, special guest, welcoming back to the show, because we did something like this earlier on in the season, is the Bristol fan that's got a soft spot for Millwall now, even though he won't admit it, is Mr. Dave Febbs. Farmer Febbs, how you doing, mate?
I'm really good. Thanks, Chris. Good to be back on again. Seems it's a long time ago that I was on, and a lot's happened.
A lot has happened, and I think when we last spoke, we had a different manager for starters. Results were pretty different, but I think that's what we're gonna get into and try to dissect throughout the next 45 minutes or so. Right, so we will talk about the new signing, Aaron Connolly, in a minute. But before we do that, it's probably worth just level setting on the season so far and put some sort of stats and data to it. So I'm just going to flick that on screen and we'll talk to it for the benefit of the people that are listening on audio only. So, Dave, do you want to just talk us through this kind of visual that you've put together and what you think it's kind of telling us in our progression sort of pre and post Neil Harris?
Yeah, I guess normally when we look at these things, it's difficult to try and get that split of what changed from when Neil Harris came in midway through the season. Typically, looking at stats, you get the whole season view. And I was keen to try and get something that showed what happened across the whole of last season, what happened for the 15, 20 games that Neil Harris was in charge at the back end of last season, and what's happened this season. So you can kind of see on the screen there, there's kind of three rows of data, full season, the bit of last season relating to Neil, and then what's happened this season. There's a couple of Alex Neil games in there, but don't worry about that too much. Not too much will have swayed from that. And then just looking at a variety of kind of attributes and data points across the piece. And I think I could my really kind of simple summary of all of it, without having to go through it line by line and row by row, is that it looked like last season Neil Harris did a bit of a reset for you. He got you back to basics, back to the way that Millwall play, got some good results. And then going into this season, I guess it goes back to the show we did kind of back end of August or maybe early September, where we were pretty positive about the kind of fruits of Neil Harris's summer labour in terms of kind of progressing to a slightly more adventurous Millwall. And that kind of has showed in some of the stats, but I think of late, we've probably, culminate with his sacking, is that you've probably dipped again. So you were kind of going pretty well at the first half of the season. And then this sort of second half leading up to Christmas, things have dropped. And, I'm not close enough to the politics of why he was sacked. But, it's ended up with Neil being replaced by Alex Neil.
Yeah. I think just one... because I know that sometimes that the Harris family listen to this, so he wasn't sacked. He mutually departed ways. But no, I think I agree. And Ben, I don't know what you think, but I did feel, and it's still to a point recently as well, but probably more earlier on in the season. On the eye test also showed a progression in our style of play, right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. And I think if you look at this, it really tells that story, didn't it? In terms of Harris came in, did a job, kept us up by being a little bit more pragmatic. And then obviously started this year, as we say, in terms of the eye test, I think we all said we're actually playing a lot more football. The passing was far less direct. And it seemed to be much better the start of this season. I think that was backed up by us leading the way in terms of XG for a long time, big chances created, but also on the big chances missed as well. So, yeah, we were at the top of those for quite some time. So I think it's always good to see the eye test being backed up by data and stats here, right? So, yeah, definitely, mate. You really saw that progression from last year. And even now, I know we've only seen 2 games of Alex Neil, but if you use the game from Monday and again take the opposition into consideration, but it is far less direct now in terms of the way we're playing.
Yeah. I think when I came on, I think you'd only played 4 league games, and I think you both felt you'd not got the results from those 4 games. I think it might have been kind of 1 win, a couple of draws, something like that. I can't remember the exact.
We lost to you, Dave.
Yeah, I didn't mention that on your own program, but then what you did have, you had a really good run after that of kind of, you certainly didn't lose many times over a kind of 8 or 10 game period, and that really seemed to kind of then saw the results catch up with what we were seeing in those numbers. And I think the numbers on the screen there kind of bear that out as well, that generally you've looked better. You probably haven't quite got the results you deserve, and there's probably some reasons that we'll touch on in this program why that might be.
I think one of the reasons is we just don't score enough goals. I'm sure we're 22nd in the league for goals scored this season. It was a problem last season. And then when you just think about it logically, it was a problem last season, and that was with Zian Fleming. You then take out Zian Fleming, you lose the loan of Michael Obafemi, which for some of his flaws, he did have an impact at times. And then you don't really have permanent replacements that are ready to make an impact right now. Of course, we spent money on Mihailo Ivanovic, which I think he will come good eventually, and we spent money on Macaulay Langstaff, but we haven't really replaced those goals. And I'm hoping, and we'll talk about it a little bit later on, that we will do some business in this window that helps us get there. So, Ben, you talked there about the fact that in the few games we've had, we have seen some signs of what Alex Neil is trying to implement. Give us a couple of examples of what you think you've seen that is a little bit more. Sorry, that is a little bit different to the previous regime.
I think certainly the main one is the use of the wing backs, getting them really high up the pitch. Again, certainly Monday night we saw a lot of overlapping from both sides with Lenny and Aziz, and then Adam Mayer and Joe Bryan. We saw them both really high up the pitch. And again, I know you've got to take the opposition into consideration, how they wouldn't have pinned the wing backs back as such. But yeah, we really saw us get it out wide and try and get into good crossing positions. And it seems as though that's going to be a theme for us. I know the first game, Sheffield Wednesday, of Alex Neil, we were far less direct, and there was a lot of talk about us sort of keeping it at the back quite well, but not really going sort of anywhere. The other night, again, taking the opposition into consideration, there was a lot of passing into midfield, getting on the half turn, and then again being able to get it out into wide areas. When we did go long, again, we tried to exploit the sort of the overlapping of the wing backs. So, yeah, look, just again on the eye test, I don't know if that is something we are working on, but it certainly seems as though that's going to be a theme now of getting the wing backs further up the pitch.
Agree. That was one of my sort of biggest takeaways. I think the other one is, you kind of alluded to it there, that we're not forcing it. We're kind of trying to, even if it means we shuffle right to left. I think Alex Neil talked about this in one of his interviews, that you have to move teams around, and at times, obviously, to do that, you go right to left a few times, and you create an option for the diagonal, which Tanganga to Bryan, I've seen quite a lot as a diagonal. But my question to you is, and I'm also would love your opinion on this, Dave, because I know that Mr. Joe Bryan is a favourite from a Bristol City perspective. Do you think, Ben, that Joe Bryan and Ryan Leonard are the right fullbacks if we're going to play that system that relies on them to be very forward thinking and overlapping?
I would say Joe Bryan, yes, because I would say he's far more comfortable going forwards than he is backwards. He's probably a modern day wing back, isn't he? In a sense of that, he's probably a bit of a left midfielder that's ended up playing left back. He's got quality at times. I know he frustrates us quite a bit, but the second goal, prime example, was a great cross for Casper, right? So yeah, when he does get it right and when he is hard up the pitch, I think he can add a lot of quality there. Lenny, I'm probably being a bit harsh on him here because he was obviously a midfielder that's made his way back again, but I wouldn't think of him as that sort of overlapping up and down wing back, would you? He's the far more of the defensive type of. He's a fullback more than a wing back, I would say. So yeah, maybe something there that we would potentially look at maybe in this window or in the summer. But yeah, out of the two, I think Joe Bryan would be far more suited to that overlapping, getting further forward style.
Again, I agree with you. I think, do you know what? Now, obviously, hindsight's a wonderful thing, but if we'd have known that, Alex Neil was going to be our manager and we were going to play this way, I'd have gone all out for Brooke Norton-Cuffy.
Yeah, I think it'd be perfect. Right? If you had someone like him, a lot of energy, can get up and down really well. Yeah, I think it'd be perfect in the style that we're trying to play now.
Yeah, as I say, hindsight's a wonderful thing, and he definitely had his flaws defensively, but going forward, I think he would have been. And he was so young, you could have developed him. But anyway, there's no point talking about a player that isn't with us. Dave, just tell us a little bit about Joe Bryan, because I think it's fair to say that he more than divides the opinion of Millwall fans. For me personally, I don't think he seems to be a bit of a scapegoat, and I think there is certainly some merit to that, because at times he's so frustrating he can't beat the first man from a set piece, and he clearly has so much technical capability. It's just odd. And at times he looks a little bit lethargic, but then he'll switch and he acts like a little bit of a hard man on the pitch. But then we all know through his social media accounts that he's the sort of guy that loves to sit in a coffee shop with a coffee and take photos and read books, which is nothing wrong with, by the way. But it's just, I don't know. I think it's fair to say the Millwall fans generally haven't necessarily taken to him. What's your view on Joe Bryan?
He's a real interesting one. So obviously came through our academy, played a multitude of positions, broke into our kind of first team on the kind of left midfield, left wing when we were in the Championship, the previous time, and then we got relegated, and he found himself playing wing back for Steve Cottrell in our promotion side, and I got to say he was probably he was the best wing back in the division by a country mile. When we stepped up, he probably had a bit of a mixed first season, and then he really came on again. And the season we went kind of close in the League Cup, he played left midfield in front of a guy called Horder Magnuson at left back, and just gave us a real good outlet there. Say great technical ability, super left foot. But the other thing he's really good at, and interesting, you mentioned kind of Diags from Tanganga, he's probably like 5'7", 5'8", but he's probably got one of the best leaps I've seen on a guy. He's really good. So I think that might be something to look out for. I don't think he's going to bomb up and down. You mentioned Brooke Norton-Cuffy. He's different kind of wing back to that. But you're talking about Leonard as well. I wonder whether you might play a little bit kind of lopsided. So you might set up what looks like a back four, but you might, in possession, kind of turn that into a bit of a back three, and Leonard becomes a bit tucked in as a right centre back, and then maybe use your wide right midfielder to kind of provide that width on that side. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see what Alex Neil does. When he was at Preston, he played a mix of a back four and a back three. One thing he did like, though, was a fairly big centre forward, and then people feeding off the bits and pieces. So happy to chuck a ball into the box and have someone attacking if the ball breaks to someone on the edge of the box. And he had people like Paul Gallagher, Callum Robinson, people like that who would then come.
Daniel Johnson.
Yeah, and and I think you've signed Connelly, haven't you, today? And I could imagine Connelly working quite well off of someone like your Ivanovic or maybe Coburn, if he's fit as well, pinging some balls across from wide positions and then getting people to join up from midfield or as a number 10 behind Honeyman as well would be a player who kind of fit that as well. So I think you've got some options there under Alex Neil.
Yeah, and I think the Alex Neil, obviously, you look at some of his successful teams, to your point, and it was Jordan Hugill at Preston. That was kind of a successful side. Cameron Jerome at Norwich. So I think very much that kind of big man up top will stick. To your point around playing the back three, I think, sort of in possession, shifting to a back three with Brian pushing on. I think we have seen a little bit of that, because one of the other things I've noticed as well, and this happened a bit under Harris as well, to be fair, is Saville kind of dropping in. So like Saville will just sit back a little bit, almost act like a dummy left back, enabling Joe Bryant to push on. So that's something else that we've certainly noticed. But let's segue then to Aaron Connolly. So it's been 1 in and 1 out at the Den over the last sort of 24 hours. So Tom Bradshaw, who, listen, I think, Ben and I are very similar, that we recognise the efforts and the abilities that Tom Bradshaw has brought to the club over the last sort of, is it 6-7 years? I can't even remember.
Yeah.
And I think it was probably the right thing for all parties just to separate and to go in a slightly different direction. And of course, Aaron Connolly signing from Sunderland on a deal until the end of the season initially. So, Dave, you very usefully put together a bit of a, I guess, side-by-side view of Aaron Connolly and Tom Bradshaw that I'm going to put on screen now. And we'd be good just to sort of get your views on maybe what some of these data points are telling us.
Yeah, so I guess, from it's probably a bit manic on the screen for people looking at, but it breaks it down into kind of key areas, and really what you want to look at for your strikers are that top left area, that red area. And you can see that the longer the bar, the better the player is at doing that. And Aaron Connolly compared, and these are both done on last season's stats, as I thought that, neither's really played much this season. So, both of them played a good shed load of games last year. So you can see there that Connolly is a really good finisher in terms of gets chances and he takes them. He's not particularly got much in the bottom right there in terms of the orange stuff, in terms of work rate and defensive output. But I might have said this to you kind of in our WhatsApp group, Chris, that he strikes me as a bit of a Millwall player. He's one of those players that opposition fans don't like. He winds players up, and I think your fans were quite like that. He's kind of the pantomime villain on the pitch as well, and I think he's good. One thing I've always been really impressed with him is his movement. So I kind of always use as my benchmark, have they got as good movement as Scott Hogan when he was at Brentford? And Connolly's one of those people who kind of puts me in the mind of Hogan in terms of the way he'll run off the shoulder. But I think one of the good things he does is he drops into pockets as well. And he's quite capable of hitting shots from outside the box as well. So, yeah, the data, I think Bradshaw's probably a bit more of a player that kind of comes to life in the box a bit more, and he'll run your channels. I don't think Connolly will do that per se, but he'll certainly, if we talked around getting on the bits and pieces of a long ball towards the box or towards the big man, I think that's where he'll thrive.
Yeah, awesome. I think I look at this and I just basically look at it and say, this might be a bit of too much of a black and white statement, but in terms of going forward and scoring goals and creating chances, Connolly's better. But in terms of the work rate and the defensiveness, and Bradshaw's better. That's probably how I look at it. And then of course there's a 7-year age gap, which as a club that are trying to minimise and reduce their average age of the squad, doesn't seem like a bad move, and we get a chunk off of the wage bill, and we thank Brothers in the process. But that's my view. Ben, what are your thoughts on overall the kind of, does feel like a bit of a swap, doesn't it? And then what this data is telling us.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it exactly side by side like we've done, I think you've nailed it on the head there, Chris. So we're not going to get the defensive output, but that's what we've ultimately been very critical at Bradders 4, right? We've kind of said he's more of a defensive striker. As you've said, he works hard. He's not the most prolific. But again, if you look at all these bars here, the attacking output from Connelly is just far superior. Just to Dave's point as well, if you look down on the second row, you got sort of the touches in the box. He's got more dribbles per 90. He's got more aggressive runs per 90. He's got more accelerations, more. So that feeds into what Dave was saying about having really good movement as well. So it seems like there we've just got a much better finisher and striker, really. As you say, you then loop that back into the strategy, how we're trying to lower the age of the squad, more athleticism in the squads. It just makes sense. It's the right time for Bradders to move on. We've got someone with a lot of upside, really. I know there's some off-the-field risks that have been sort of spoken about, but listen, if he comes in, scores 5-6 goals, and he's going to earn a contract for next year, then you've got another potential asset on your hands who was highly touted at Brighton. So for me, it ticks a lot of boxes. There's not much downside to it with it being a short-term deal. If he has still got his issues off the pitch, which we hope he hasn't, then we haven't got him for that long. So in the summer, we just say thanks, but no thanks. If it works out the other way, as I say, we've potentially got an asset on our hands at a really good age. So, I like it.
Same. I think you've absolutely nailed that, mate. I think I just define it as a low risk option. To your point, I think at the end of the day, he'll want to get his career back on track. So for me, he'll come here. He'll be hungry. I've yet to listen to the interview with him, but it sounds like he spoke well. He spoke very well in his interview. We opened up about his problems, so massive credit to him for that. And I don't know, but I think we got a small fee for Bradders, and I wouldn't imagine there's too much difference in what they're earning salary-wise. So it is literally probably just a bit of a swap, bringing the average age down. I would also say that Connolly's probably got a little bit more flexibility in terms of where he can play. So I think he probably can play as someone off of a big man. He can probably play on the shoulder, just on his own if needed. And I think he can probably play in one of those sort of what they call forward areas now, on the left or the right. So I think there's a lot of flexibility there as well. And I would imagine he knows a couple of the lads from the Irish squads as well. I think he might know Danny Mack and stuff. So overall, I think I'm okay with it. Dave, from an outside perspective, sorry.
I was just going to say, last thing on Connelly really was, I know we're probably guessing here, but Alex Neil doesn't scream like the manager who will take much crap off the pitch. So there's probably a conversation been had there with Connelly before signing, right, to find out where he's at. So you'd like to think he is trying to get his career back on track, like you said, mate. And Alex Neil, as I say, he doesn't scream to me like he's going to take much shit off people. So
no, definitely not. I mean, my mate Alex Neil is certainly the not the sort of person that will take shit. Obviously, Dave, I know before you say it, very, very different hair color to what I have now. Dave, just from an outsider's point of view, what's your perspective on that trade of Bradshaw for Connolly? Because I looked at when Connolly was announced that he was leaving Sunderland, so Sunderland's Twitter, you couldn't find anyone really saying a negative thing about him. Just said, good luck to him. It hasn't necessarily worked out, but good luck to him. But what's your take, mate?
So I think if you'd announced, 3.5-year contract or something like that, you might think, that's a bit of a risk. But you saying it's just a short term to end the season and see where it goes from there?
Yeah,
I think it's a no-brainer.
It's a club option, Dave, I think.
Yeah, even better. So, try before you buy kind of thing. It sounds perfect. I think, you guys are much closer to your own side than I am, but you probably think Bradshaw's gone over the peak now, hasn't he? And if you're replacing one player with another, numbers wise, I think you've got a better player there at this point, let alone the fact that he's got 7 or 8 years difference in age as well. I think as a City fan, we've always kind of talked about him. Always, he's a good striker. He could be a difference maker, but we've always worried about. I think historically, he's on quite a big wage when he was at Brighton allegedly, and So you always kind of worry about whether that would fit for us. But he's obviously gone through a difficult time. Seems like he's come through the other side. I think it's always encouraging when, you know, the Sunderland fans haven't got a bad word to say. I think he actually settled in pretty well there. I think it's just probably opportunity really that's probably allowed him to become available for you. So no brainer for me.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And always good to get your take, mate. So that's one signing in the door, and we've been heavily linked with another one today. As the point of recording, nothing official has been announced, but we've been heavily linked with a centre-back who is on loan from Brentford to Exeter City. What we do know is he has been recalled from that loan. So reason to believe that there is something potentially in this link. And of course, that is, I'm going to get the pronunciation wrong, of course. It's Tristan Kramer. So French, I think he's 23, 24 years old, centre-back. Like I said, been on loan at Exeter, previously at Bristol Rovers. Dave, you've again pulled together this really interesting data sheet on him. What does this tell us about if we were to go ahead and bring him to Millwall? You know, what we could expect to see from Tristan, or whatever how he's pronounced in French.
I think what you're seeing here is, if you look in the bottom right, first of all, which is, you know, winning the ball, the first three rows on there show he's not a going, you know, smash it centre half. You know, what he's going to do is he's going to stand off his man, and he's going to try and intercept, and he's going to try and anticipate. That's really his game. I think I called him earlier. I'd say he's more of a centre back than a centre half for, you know, us oldies who remember those old positions. But what he will do, you can see then there's kind of two big orange bars sticking out on the bottom right, and that's, you know, blocks and interceptions, and again leads you back into that anticipation, knowing where the danger is. And then really you start to look bottom right at the kind of darker grey bars and then the lighter grey bar. He's really good on the ball. He's composed. He's elegant. He's got lovely hair. He's got better hair than you, Chris. I'll put him up with those Millwall ladies, and Ben might not be quite so popular anymore. But yeah, I've seen him a couple of times for Exeter. His name popped up early on the season because he scored a couple of goals, and I'm thinking, who's this guy that Exeter have got? We got quite, I say, not necessarily close links, but got some mates who watch a lot of Exeter, and they've talked about him as well, and, you know, said he's done really well there. And I think, you know, he gives you that option in the opposition box as well. I don't want to kind of steal anyone's thunder on that about what Ben might say, but yeah, I think what you've got is a pretty elegant defender who can do the basics of defending, but he's also useful on the ball. And if that's going to be the evolvement under Alex Neil, then I think it sounds like the right type of signing. You know, how much he'll adapt to Championship football, we'll have to wait and see.
Ben, thoughts?
Yeah, I think first of all, don't know much about him. I think, again, similar to you, Chris, I had a look earlier, and all the Exeter fans were pretty sorry to see him go and be recalled. So that's always a good sign. Again, he's coming from a good system in terms of Brentford. They've certainly got a good eye when it comes to sort of signing younger foreign players. So, listen, again, I think it ticks all the boxes, mate. Certainly, the sort of profile we're looking at. Certainly, the sort of profile that is a little bit more exciting now. But more importantly, the stats there as well back up his sort of defensive work. And it looks like he's not adverse to a goal or two. So, yeah, again, mate, look, just a really, really solid potential signing if he is to come in the door.
Yeah, agree. And I think for those of you that haven't heard it yet, you can listen to Donovan Debates, who sort of did a little 7-minute video on the potential new man. And he talked about the fact that he's played in a 2, he's played in a 3 quite a lot of the time at Exeter. Interestingly, he plays on the left side if he plays on the 3, but he's right-footed. So that was something that I wasn't sort of sure on. And I think for me, this is the type of signing I want to see, right? You know, a good age, someone that's doing really well at League One level. Let's just be honest. We're not going to be able to go out and sign top Championship players. We just don't have the budget for it. So actually, when you look at the players that we have signed over the summer that I think have had relative success, you're probably looking at your Femi Aziz, your Lucas Jensen. The two things they've got in common is they were top performers in League One. And I don't mind us going to get those players, especially if they're the age profile that Tristan is. So seems like a good bit of business. I wouldn't imagine he'll cost the earth, got no idea. And hopefully it is competition for Jake Cooper and Japhet Tanganga, which I think is needed. And it will enable one or both of Murray Wallace and Wes Harding to potentially move on, of course, with Sean Hutchinson's contract out in the end of the summer. So I'm all for it.
Just on that, Chris, just something you mentioned there about the formation that he's played in a 2 and played in a 3. With Connelly coming in and just what we said there about his sort of movement or maybe his preferred position being off a bigger man, do we think that might lend itself to a formation change under Alex Neil? Do you think we could see us go to a 3 if we were to get Crammer?
Possibly. My take on Alex Neil is that he will be quite agile. I don't think he necessarily is like, right, my formation is this and it will never change and I'll put, round pegs and square holes the other way around. You know what I'm saying? I think he'll be flexible in that. So could we end up going to a 3? Possibly. But I would imagine what he'll want to try and do initially is get as many messages across to evolve the style of play with a fixed formation and then potentially look to evolve that. But that's just my point of view. Dave, I don't know if you have a point of view on that.
I think it's possible, and I think go back to what I was saying earlier, that kind of almost lopsided way of playing. But if you've got someone like Crammer who can, play in there, Cooper doesn't strike me as being the outside centre back on the left of a 3, whereas maybe Crammer could be that one, and Cooper go in the middle, and then you've got Tanganga, or if he does go at some point, then you've got Leonard who comes back in there as well. I think the other bit that your guy who was on at lunchtime mentioned was the kind of set piece threat as well. And Crammer, he made a really good point on there that Crammer's the guy that usually attacks the near post, whereas you've got someone like Cooper attacking the far. Look at that seamless work there, and I think that's something that gives you something useful. Alex Neil will be meticulous on set pieces as well, both ends of the pitch. But you can bet your bottom dollar he'll be looking to score lots of goals from your own attacking set pieces as well. So that feeds into that as well. Because I think at the moment you pretty much everything gets aimed to Cooper and you play off the next ball, don't you? Whereas I think you get a different option if you've got someone like Crammer there attacking a different zone. And maybe some of those balls that Joe Bryan don't get to Cooper might get picked up by Crammer, and he might become a favourite of yours.
Well, let's see. No, do you know what? It's not a Joe Bryan bash, and I really want him to be successful. And if I'm honest, I hope the club renew his contract in the end of the season. So we shall see. But so sticking with the defensive line, we've also been linked with another defender quite heavily, someone that was meant to move to Birmingham in the summer, and you can read that Birmingham pulled out because of a medical. I've also read that Birmingham pulled out because terms changed, all this kind of thing. So I don't know, but it's a guy that's playing, the top of the Dutch league. Try to pronounce his name now. I can hear like Jesper just being like, Chris, just don't get this wrong. Mike Eerdhuizen. Probably completely wrong, but I'm going to put him on screen. So he's playing at Sparta Rotterdam. He's a left-footed centre-back. Potentially could be a long-term replacement for Jake Cooper. Giving us that kind of competition at centre-back. So I don't know. Maybe if we sign Crammer, this doesn't come off, but who knows? There's stranger things have happened. But tell us, Dave, what does Mike Ease, Dutch Mike, there you go. What does this tell us about Big Dutch Mike?
I can only admit on this occasion that I've only heard his name, and probably because of the links in the summer to Birmingham. But I think he's got decent pedigree. But you can see there's quite simply there's lots of long lines on his viz, and that means he's pretty good and he's pretty balanced across all of it as well. And based on the data, you'd be thinking every club in the Championship will be after him. But I don't know enough about his game to comment on that. Sparta Rotterdam are a side that are near the bottom of the table, so he's probably needing to do a fair bit of defending. They look like they play a kind of fairly possession-based football. So that's why his passing stats and on the ball stats are quite decent. But I can't offer a lot more on that, to be honest. I have to wait for you to sign him and then watch him play.
Well, watch this space. We'll have to see if there's anything more in that link. Ben, what's your view on Dutch Mike? Anything from what the data's telling us, or just your thoughts on the link to him in the first place?
The link's interesting, obviously, with him. I'm right in saying was there something wrong with his medical at Birmingham? Was I right in saying that?
That was one of the stories that's put out. There have been others that contradict that, so I'm not so sure. Fine,
okay. I mean, look, we know Birmingham were chucking cash around, aren't they? So that he must be highly thought of from that respect. Again, just looking at the bottom right sort of data there in terms of winning the ball, pretty much all above league average. So I know Dave said it feeds into maybe with Sparta Rotterdam being quite low down. I get that. But again, looking at it at the face of it, all these data points are really strong. Just had a look. He's 194 centimetres. So what's that? 6'4" again. He's another big fella. The left-footed nature of it, I think, is becoming more important in terms of having a left foot and a right footer combination in the modern game. I think a lot of managers now like that. In terms of the profile, again, good age. I'm assuming the fact that he's coming from the Dutch league, he's not going to cost a fortune. Again, a lot of positives, mate. Again, like it. If it's one that we're going after, then it wouldn't be against Big Dutch Mike at all.
He might have been an option, and maybe that's gone, and it's now Kramer. Just seeing a kind of both play on the kind of left side if they've got a preference at defence, or do you see him maybe as a possible successor to Cooper? How old's Cooper now? Late 20s, 30?
I think he's 30, 31 now, Cooper. I mean, he's one of those players that I think will be able to play to the level for many years to come. So I don't think... I think naturally, I think you need at the very least, if you're going to play a two, at the very, very least 3 centre-backs that are all, good enough for that starting berth. I think at the moment we have 2, and I think that's the problem. And then when you factor in the fact that...
Well, Chris, sorry, mate, I was going to say the gap from the starting 2 to then the next 3 is such a big jump, in my opinion. There's no sort of... there isn't any gap there, is there, in terms of quality? Hutch is just getting on now. Muzzer we've seen recently, and obviously Harding hasn't had a kick. I think that's the big thing. The gap between our first 2 starting centre-halves and then the next 3 is just too big.
Yeah, agree. And do you know what's really interesting? I don't think that Muzzer did too much wrong defensively when he's been in the side. A couple of things that you could say, okay, but nothing majorly wrong defensively. But I think one of his biggest weaknesses is on the ball. And what we've just pulled out here about Kramer and Dutch Mike is that actually they're better on the ball. And I think if we're trying to evolve our style, that is certainly needed. But coming back to the point, I think it could be that we're preparing for Tanganga to leave. It pains me to say that because I genuinely, hand on heart, believe he is the best centre-back in the league by a long way. And I pit him against anyone at Burnley and Leeds and all that. I genuinely believe that. And
it's right up there in these, it doesn't go unnoticed.
No. Well, the thing is, he does sometimes, like when these podcasts or the EFL, they put out like the team of the season so far, he's never in any of them. And I welcome that because if he can go under the radar, that's fantastic. But I think he certainly won't be going under the radar. And if he lines up in a Millwall shirt in August next year, I would be gobsmacked. So maybe there's a little bit of long-term planning and we want to bring in more than one centre-back, whether that's in January or whether that is in the summer. So we'll see. Okay, so that's the kind of defensive sort of players that we've either sort of been linked with or close to signing or whatever. But we also touched on at the start that we need to score more goals. And to score more goals, we need to create more opportunities. And just as we are speaking, Fabrizio Romano has announced that Romain Esse to Palace is basically done and will be completed after a medical on Friday. So that looks like that's happening for a club record fee. It hasn't been disclosed, but it will certainly be a club record fee. So I mention that because you've got a team that already isn't scoring enough goals, isn't creating enough chances, and you take out your best attacking threat, and we're kind of sort of back to square one. So if I'm Millwall, I am in the market for some creativity and some more goal scoring threats. And one player that I've really liked the look of when I've seen him, and again, thinking about that target market of players that are doing well at League One, right age bracket, all that kind of thing, is a chap called Thelo Aasgaard. Obviously, from that name, he's quite clearly born in Liverpool. But we've got a visual on this one, so thank you for that, Dave. Again, just want to caveat this. This is just our opinion of who we should be going after. This is just someone that we've looked at and said we quite like. But Dave, what does this tell us about, just as this example, Thelo Aasgaard?
Pretty much that he's good quality. I'm really kind of disappointed that he's come to your attention, because when I open up my vises to find players, he's the one that my League One viz opens on, because he's kind of top of my list of players that I really like, and think that, if at some point City were to lose someone like Anis Mehmeti, then he'd be the person who I'd bring in. He's really good technically, and he's probably a little bit, I'd probably say on the lightweight side, but he's very technical, and he can do the lot really. And he's got goals to his game as well, playing sort of in that kind of wideish left or inside left position and flitting around. He's just a really good player. And I didn't realise he was from Liverpool. I assumed he was from somewhere Scandinavian, but it looks like he's probably got some like Norwegian parents by the look of it. I really like him. I think he'd be a good asset to any team looking for a player in that kind of market, I think.
Dave, where's Mehmeti going? Just out of interest, or where's he linked?
No, not at all. I was like thinking of succession planning. He's probably one of our more sellable assets that we've got at the moment. So yeah, always thinking about who we might be looking at afterwards. So yeah.
So
already had Aziz off me, because that was another one I had on my list, kind of last.
Well, maybe the Mill recruitment team watch our shows, or watch some of the stuff you put out on Twitter, and they go, right, okay, we'll have him. Ben, have you seen much of this chap? What are your thoughts on him?
I just remember him, as I said before we came on recording, mate, scoring when we played them a couple of years ago when we were chasing the playoffs, and we went up to Wigan, and he scored. And I think he came off the bench that day, if I remember rightly, and for about 25 minutes, and he terrorised us. So yeah, look, I just had a look at his stats for the last couple of years, just in terms of goals and assists. This year, obviously, sort of midway point of the season, he's on 6 goals, 2 assists. Last year, 8 goals, 3 assists in the league. That is for both of those. So I think he's run it at about one in 3 last year in terms of goal involvements, and this year nearly 1 in 2. So yeah, look, again, in terms of creativity, he ticks a lot of boxes. Age, again, good age. You can see he's a sellable asset moving forward if he does come in and do it for us. Interesting, you said there, Dave, he's quite lightweight, but those sort of defensive numbers, again, sort of most of them are above league average. Yeah. So again, you might say there that he does work quite hard off the ball as well. So yeah, again, I keep saying it, but if he is someone we are looking at, then a really, really good profile in terms of what we're trying to do, but more importantly, putting up numbers that we currently don't have in our side in terms of goals or assists.
Yeah, probably won't. Looking at kind of left-hand half of that, and certainly the kind of the light grey ones there are kind of how successfully he does things. So his percentage of crosses, his percentage of passes, all those kind of that's pretty unheard of for a player to be that kind of blanket high across the piece. And that tells me this. He's got real good technical skills, but he's also got good decision making as well. So. Yeah, I think he's a good player.
And just to point out there, Dave, as well, he's playing for Wigan, a side that aren't exactly in the top of League One, so probably even more impressive.
Yep.
Yeah, he's stood out for a while, I think. You know, I really liked Callum Lang as well, that was at Wigan. Obviously ended up going to Portsmouth, and I think he's been certainly one of Portsmouth's better players for the last year or so. So to what you guys have said, you know, we're a side that needs to improve creativity. Look at this, check. We're a side that needs to improve just output in terms of numbers and goals and assists, check. And we're a club that is trying to sign younger players that are feasible and that potentially have resale value, check. To me, he ticks all those boxes, and you know, I have no idea whether he's someone we're monitoring or not, but for me, we certainly should be. So that's Mr. Aasgaard. And then when we think about the very top of the pitch, gut feel tells me Connelly's not going to play there. So that means that although we've talked about Connelly and Bradshaw being a bit of a like for like, maybe not so. So that kind of leaves us with an injured Josh Coburn, a improving high potential Mihailo Ivanovic, but of course, you know, he's very raw. And then Macaulay Langstaff, which I think we all really want to do well. I think probably the Football League want him to do well. I think he's just kind of got that reputation, but at the moment it's just really not working for him, and I just can't see him ever being comfortable playing in a number one, in a one, if you like, up top in the Championship. So I think we are short of options. We have a viz on one player that, whether we're monitoring or not, I don't know. But Ben, you know, just want to come to you. What dream scenario, what sort of player would you like to see us go for at the real top end of the pitch?
Well, I think the one thing that all those players that we do have available to us, Chris, that are at the club now, is a real lack of pace there, in my opinion. Macaulay Langstaff certainly isn't pacey. What I've seen from Ivanovic isn't pacey. So Coburn certainly not. So I would really like someone that's going to be able to stretch players. Now, whether that is going to be Connelly, I don't know. But yeah, I'd really, really like someone to come in that's sort of quite scary, and someone that we can just change it up a little bit. And if we do need to go a little bit more direct, we can get a ball in behind and give something centre-halves to think about, really. Because, again, with all those players that we've got on the books currently, it's all very in front of you, isn't it? They're great with their backs to go, I would imagine. Taking Connelly aside just for 1 minute there, but who we've currently had up to today. So, yeah, I'd really like to see a pacey centre-forward coming.
As soon as you say that, I just think of Obafemi. I don't know why. And I know he has, well, I don't know. Rumours are to be believed that he has some off-the-field challenges himself, which is why he wasn't back to the club and why he's probably fall from grace in terms of he was sort of Premier League player and now he's on loan at Plymouth and doesn't even start some games. But that is the kind of physical profile I think I'd be looking for. Dave, from your perspective, is there anyone you've seen that you think, you know, the Championship club should be looking at? Obviously, we talked off air about the lad at Wickham.
Yeah, Connelly. Yeah, I've not seen tons of him, but he looks a useful player. I think the player maybe worth having a look at is maybe seeing if Ipswich want to budge on someone like Ali Al Hamadi, someone like that who'll kind of work hard up front for you, physical, pretty quick. I think he can finish at this level. Someone like that, I think, would be a useful player. Probably, get him on loan as well, and just kind of see whether that works for you. He's not getting hardly any game time at Ipswich, and just don't let him have penalties. I don't know if you saw his penalty at the weekend, which he hit about 10 yards wide, and it looked like he was aiming 10 yards wide as well. So yeah, it was a shocker. But no, I think he's quite a handful. I think he kind of fit in quite well with the way you want to play, and maybe Alex Neil wants to play.
Yeah, we were. I think one of many clubs that were linked with him in the summer transfer window, and then of course he ended up staying at Ipswich, and he's been on like the periphery of the squad. But my guess is that Ipswich obviously they're building their forward line around Liam Delap, and rightly so. And I think that they in order to try and maintain their Premier League status, I would imagine they'll try to spend a little bit at the top end of the pitch, which may later on in the window open up the option for him or someone like that to come out.
Just signed or about to sign Philogena, haven't they? So that's a kind of wide player they're looking to bring in, which probably might mean one less player to play down the middle. So yeah, he might be an option just to kind of bide your time on with the window. Is Coburn out for a long period?
I think the club haven't said too much about it. Obviously, we know that he's been out since the Stoke game away at Stoke. I can't remember when that was, Ben. Was it back in September, October? That wasn't September. It was quite some time ago. But I think he's starting to come back into training in the next week or two, I think. But he's
as well, Chris, is the fact he's had a couple of those now, right, isn't he? He hasn't had a real run. He's been out a couple of times, Dave. Not obviously this one's a little bit longer, but even before that, he's had a couple of niggles, isn't he?
Yeah, that Stoke game's quite an interesting one. I said you didn't know before the show started that was the last game that Jake Cooper had played before his injury, and you were sat 8th at that point. And I wonder whether that's kind of a bit of a correlation with the drop off. And I watched highlights about the last 5 games over the weekend because this is kind of how sad I am. Trying to do a bit of prep and
thorough, Dave. Thorough. That's what you are.
I thought you kind of down that left-hand channel, not just because Murray Wallace is playing there, but I think you looked easy to get at in that kind of channel. And I also thought that whoever was playing in front of Joe Bryan early on in the season, you had Duncan Watmore, and he was all legs and energy and gave you a bit of goal output as well. And I don't think he's featured as much of late. And you mentioned earlier about kind of George Saville dropping into that left back to allow Joe Bryan to kind of move on. And I didn't kind of see that. It looked like you were a little bit disjointed down that left hand side, possibly because of the way Wallace is playing. You don't get the same type of distribution there that you might have got, even though Cooper's not the greatest passer in the world. But I guess everyone's used to the way he plays, aren't they? And you make different runs for different.
Such a mainstay of the side.
And I wonder whether that's been a bit of a miss for you, that actually your left-sided centre back is affecting your attacking output. And maybe there's some other reasons and nuances in there as well. But I just thought it was interesting that all the threat from the other team came down that side of the pitch.
Yeah, really good observation. And by the way, I want to correct myself. I got it wrong. I think Coburn got injured in the Oxford game away from home. So I got that wrong. But I think your observations there on Cooper are spot on. And as I said to you off air, I hadn't really made that correlation between the form and that. And I think there's a lot to be said just when you're a direct team, a lot of your play and a lot of your attacks actually do build from the back. But in terms of, Cooper, long balls or whatever. So you take that out and that disrupts probably some of the patterns that we're used to playing. He's a big, we are a set piece side at times, let's be real. He's a big presence there. And he's our captain. So he is a huge influence on the side. So just seeing him, it was only Dagenham, as Ben said earlier, but just seeing him back in that team, getting the 90 minutes, it was like he never left. And it was great to see him. And hopefully he can start to kind of put that run together that he did before, where he went so many games without any injury. So let's hope that happens. I'd love to just, is there anywhere else on the pitch that for January, we can do one for the summer, but for January that you think we need to be looking at bringing anyone in?
I mean, for me, mate, obviously, as you said, Fabrizio's announced that the SA deal was pretty much done, but we all kind of knew that was happening anyway. I think the front four, mate, for me, it genuinely was left, right, 10 and centre forward. They were the positions, because it's all up the pitch. Defensively, we are solid, we're sound, we don't concede many goals. Even again, we go back to the other night. I mean, that first half, we had them camped in their box, basically, didn't we? And we just didn't have that killer instinct in the final third, someone to unlock that pass, someone to stick the ball in the back of the net. So for me, it is all attacking. And as I say, I would love anyone. Obviously, we've got Connelly in. If we got another 3 in, I think we need another 3 because the 10 we've been crying out for a while. We just spoke about the centre forward position. And with now Aziz, with that what looked like a groin from Monday night, we don't know how long he's going to be out for. So
good point.
Long-winded answer, mate. But yeah, I think just attacking options for me. It's been a problem now, not only this season, for quite some time, isn't it? So yeah, the more we can get in higher up the pitch, the better.
I'm just trying to think of anyone else, like name-wise, that springs to mind. We did a viz on Miles Leaburn at Charlton. I'm not sure now, and what we've discussed, whether he's a sort of profile. He feels almost like a bit like an Ivanovic, really. You know, someone that is sort of young and can sort of play that target man role. And you know, he's got a good goal return for Charlton this season, but it's probably maybe too close to Ivanovic. I think, to Ben's point earlier, we probably want someone who's got that raw pace that can sit on the edge. Still got the physicality about him, which is why I like Obafemi. But yeah, I agree. We definitely need more in the forward area. And even for long-term planning, right? Because Watmore, Honeyman, how long are they really going to be around? Will they both be here come the summer? Who knows?
Someone that I did watch the other day, Chris, and I really like the look of. Was Nathan Lowe at Walsall. I didn't know he was on loan from Stoke, but he's obviously had a great season down in League Two. But was the other fella at Walsall was Jamie Jellis, the midfielder.
Yes.
He sort of come through non-league and obviously now having a really strong season at Walsall. Someone like that, he looked really good. And him and Nathan Lowe obviously struck up a decent partnership this year. I know he sort of plays in behind, sort of out wide, Jellis. But again, you're looking at that sort of 10, maybe wide player, can play across that front line. Someone like that you might want to have a look at. But yeah, he impressed me.
Jellis is good. He scored some kind of decent long range efforts as well this season as well. So yeah, he's definitely got a goal in him from breaking forward as well. I've never been quite sure whether I've seen him play kind of right wing back as well. So if you did go to a back 3, he could be an option there. Nathan Lowe, I only saw him play for about 20 minutes for Stoke last season against us. And that was enough for me to stick his name down in my little notepad as someone to keep an eye on. He's had a really good half season at Walsall. He's just been recalled as well, I think, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Has either got plans for him to go somewhere else, or maybe he wants to have a look at him in the second half of the season as well. But yeah, he's only a young lad, but he doesn't have to put himself about. He kind of battered Rob Dickey and Zach Viner last year at our place, and you think kind of sticks in your memory when 19-year-olds do that to experienced centre backs. So yeah, definitely have a look at Leaburn. For me, I think he needs to have half a season without injuries really, and see where I don't think anyone would want to take the risk on him. The other player I think he's injured as well at the moment is Peterborough's Kwame Poku.
Oh yeah,
with left foot.
God, I'd love him.
Yeah, but you pay Peterborough tax, don't you, with them? Although I think he's out of contract in the summer, so might be something that could do there. I think the other guy there, Ricky J Jones, I've not seen an awful lot of him that thinks he steps up to the next level. But yeah, that's a couple of names from me of people who I've kind of had a little nose at.
Yeah,
the player I really liked in the summer who ended up going across to Belgium was a guy called Max Dean, who was at MK Dons. Although he's not physical present, he was more of, I was looking at him as being a Tommy Conway replacement for us in terms of somebody play off the shoulder and good finisher, and he's done quite well out over in Belgium as well. I think he'd be one to keep an eye on over the next 6 months.
Oh, I hadn't realised he'd gone to Belgium. I did wonder where he went. Poku is definitely one that, yes, you pay Peterborough tax, but the fact that he's injured at the minute, I think he's back till March. The fact that I think you're right, his contract's out at the end of the summer. Surely someone takes a punt on him. I think I'd love to see him as the long-term replacement for SA, but we'll have to see. And of course, we've been linked with, and again, it's just on X, who knows if there's anything in it, is Luke Cundall as well, which is someone that we've also been linked with. But gents,
us as well, but that happens every window for us. He always gets mixed with us in terms of, I think his agent does a decent job. So.
Yeah, that's what they're paid for. But anyway, gents, I think we'll call it there. Dave, first of all, just a massive thank you to you for all of the prep that you do. You do it out of the kindness of your heart, and obviously the fact that we're supporting the cancer research charity, and we really appreciate your contributions to that. So a massive thank you, because it is really appreciated, especially if you don't even support Millwall. So thank you, mate, as always. Thanks for coming on. And Mr. Green, thank you, mate. Much appreciated. I've really, we're both data geeks, let's be honest. So I've really enjoyed kind of getting back into the weeds of looking at data. And look, it's refreshing. One player signed, a couple more players linked, all good profiles, all good ages. We just have to see what the next few weeks brings, mate?
Absolutely, mate. I said it on a Tuesday Night Live. Exciting times to be a Millwall fan, which is not often to be said. But the main thing we need to do, Chris, is buy Dave a Millwall mug. That's what we need to do for saying thank you. We need to get him a Millwall mug.
It's in the post on its way to you right now. All right.
Start the merch. Chat with Chaps mug. That's what I want.
Chat with Chaps mug. Oh, they'll be queuing up for him, mate. They'll be queuing up for him. Gents, thanks again. Going to get this show out nice and pronto tonight. I'll get it out tonight. And really appreciate it. Listeners, viewers, we really appreciate your support. Thank you as always for supporting us and listening and us waffle about all this kind of stuff. And much appreciated. Please do like, share, subscribe, and all that kind of good stuff. And of course, bye for now.